Abu Chutzera is in the blood. So the Abu Chutzera family is a rabbinic dynasty, correct? Right? So you are a direct descendant of this huge rabbinic dynasty?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's a lot of pressure.
No pressure, but you come from this huge dynasty.
No pressure.
Of rabbis. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Starstruck with Sarah Pachter, brought to you by Aish. Here on this podcast, I interview celebrities, digital influencers, and philanthropists, and those with stories of resilience. I try to draw out the deeper meaning behind their everyday choices and share that with you in a relatable way. For more episodes and other content, subscribe to Aish.com's podcast channel. And now, on today's episode, we have a magnetic guest. She is beautiful inside and out. Her name is Liz Kennedy, and she's a Jewish entrepreneur who started the company Beauty Magnet. Previously, she partnered with celebrities like Cindy Crawford and companies like L'Oreal. She was also the host and producer of the makeover segment on The Steve Harvey Show. Liz has an incredible resume and an even more incredible story. Liz, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm so pumped to be here.
Oh, me too. I mean, I'm so happy. You know, let's not pretend. I want to be real for just a second. You've sat on these couches before,
yes.
Right? You were here for Shabbat. I know that my guest loved meeting you. Everyone was so impressed by you, and we had such a great time. But I'd love to know what your impressions about Shabbat were, and was this your first Shabbat ever?
No, it was definitely not my first Shabbat, but it's really nice because my Shabbats are always like, being from New York, Shabbat is so much more of a thing in New York. Like everyone gets really dressed up and it's definitely more, I don't know, it's just more New York. And in LA, it's so casual. And I kind of felt like this was a little piece of home because everyone was like dressed up properly. And like it was just more, I don't know, it felt more like home for me.
I'm so happy that you felt comfortable and everything. So you said it was not your first Shabbat. What was your background like growing up?
So our Shabbats are very casual. We're like in sweats, and I would like it to be less casual, but by the time it's Friday, everyone's so beat, you know, it's like you're just shot, you know? So we're trying to get like ramped back up to that. But my mom didn't keep Shabbat. So my parents got divorced very young. I was in Israel until I was like 5 or 6. And then growing up in upstate New York, it was very much so a small Jewish community. Even though it existed, it was very, very tight and very small. But there was definitely no Sephardic Jews, and being half Sephardic, half Ashkenazi, it was just very like typical American. Like if you can imagine what upstate New York Shabbat's like, that's exactly what it is. And we didn't keep it. And then once I got back from college and I was back in New York City, especially living in Brooklyn. I was 23 years old living in Brooklyn, which is a super Jewish area, of course. And that's when I was like, okay, like I kind of want to start getting back into this. And that's when I felt like it was more normalized, especially coming from college in Florida, Tampa, Florida, where everyone's like super blonde, super Christian. And like, it was like my first time going to like a Christian rock church, which is actually one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. Like people let loose there. They like live their best lives in Christian rock churches.
Okay, I love that. Oh my gosh.
So after going to college in Florida and coming back home, I was like, all right, I feel like it's back to my roots. And then it started kind of ramping up again.
That's great. Well, you mentioned that you're half Sephardi, half Ashkenaz.
Yeah.
My parents also, my dad is Moroccan, and my mom is more Ashkenaz. So it's funny we have that in common. What were your parents like growing up?
So my mom is very, very, very relaxed about Judaism. Like she was always very spiritually connected to Judaism, but never kept the traditions as much, besides like Passover, Hanukkah, like all the like the typical, you know, holidays. But she was just definitely more casual about it, whereas my father was like, I mean, his, you know, bloodline is Abu Chutzera, so it's not like you can't, even if you wanted to escape from it, you can't, you know. But my grandmother was very religious, and my uncle is very religious, and my dad kind of dabbled in and out, but Shabbat prayers, you know, that was like a norm.
Very nice. Now, going back just to define for everyone, you said Abu Chutzera is in the blood. So the Abu Chutzera family is a rabbinic dynasty, correct? Right? So you are a direct descendant of this huge rabbinic dynasty?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's a lot of pressure.
No pressure, but you come from this huge dynasty.
No pressure.
Of rabbis.
Especially because like a part of me feels, I mean, real talk.
Yeah.
A part of me feels like after my parents got divorced, you know, my mom was so tied to Israel and Judaism. And I think the divorce made her so angry that she kind of removed herself from a lot of it. And I feel like we got kind of colonized in a very strange way. So now coming back to it, like, especially as I age, you know, we've been talking like, hey, what are your morning prayers? Like everyone's looks different. And I felt so connected to yours. Like everyone has their own thing, right? And as I'm aging and just becoming more connected to myself and spirituality and Judaism, I find myself really like, kind of like it's a return to home for me, you know? So yeah, as much as it is a lot of pressure, I know it's kind of just something that I need to do. And I feel like when you're tapping into your true self and you have to dig into those deepest parts, it can be weird. Yeah. It can be challenging. And in such a modern world, right? Like balancing Judaism and spirituality while being a working woman and a mother. It's like, okay, where does it end? Where does it start? And I feel like I just have to find what always feels best and authentic to me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you feel like it almost feels like you're returning home. It's so interesting that you use that phrase because the Hebrew word teshuvah, which is to, if you weren't necessarily religious or observant or involved in Judaism and you decide to embark on that journey, it's actually called teshuvah, which means to return. So it's interesting. But what I wanted to ask you is, you know, you mentioned that you were asking me about prayer. Yeah. When you reached out the other day and asking me to kind of teach you and learn with you about prayer, I was curious to know what it was specifically about that topic that drew you to speak to me about it.
So I bought a book on Amazon, the Baba Sali like history book, and I feel like I'm gonna cry.
And just to define, the Baba Sali is part of that Abu Chutzera dynasty?
Yes, yeah. So I bought this book. I can't believe I didn't send you this. I was reading, it was like page 15. When I get home, I'm going to snap it for you and send it to you. And it was talking about Baba Sali and how he was obviously a very historical and famous Kabbalist. And one of the paragraphs started with, there was something about him that was magnetic. And I just started hysterically crying. I lost my freaking mind. And I sent it to one of my guy friends who's very big into Kabbalah. And I was like, can you believe this shit? And he was just like dumbfounded too. Because I was like, what are the chances that someone's describing Baba Sali as magnetic, and my company is all about being magnetic and teaching people how to be more magnetic, not just physically, but internally. And I lost it. And I was like, yeah, okay, you can't say stuff like that. And then be like, well, you know, I'm just not going to tap into Judaism even more. It's like, these things are not BS. Right. It's signs that you have to dig deeper.
Right. Sometimes there's a message, so to speak, that we really just need to listen to and follow that message and see where it leads us. But speaking of your company, Beauty Magnet, and how magnetic you are, so it's the same description. I use that description to describe you. Tell us a little bit about your company. I kind of actually want to backtrack and understand, were you always into beauty? Did you always know you wanted to start a beauty company? And then we'll talk about what your company is.
Sure. So growing up with a single mom, my mom's a teacher, major tomboy, played basketball growing up, always had like a skin routine in terms of like cleansing and like wearing SPF, at least at like the bare minimum. But she didn't wear makeup. She didn't like super, you know, like girly clothes and like all that. And she's a teacher, very practical, pragmatic, like let's get to the point, which I love about her. But I didn't have anyone to teach me. Like I had like big frizzy hair, over tweezed eyebrows. And I was like, okay, I want to feel more put together. So I started teaching myself at like a young age, all these things. This is before social media. You went to like Macy's counters, right, which like they didn't even know what they were doing, you know, like it was tragic. So as I aged, I was always the girl like in high school and college, like showing women like, oh, this is how to use this. Like I loved like figuring out how to use things. I loved like tinkering with things and like breaking it apart and putting it together and just like figuring out how it worked. And I loved skin to the point that like that's probably why I ended up, after being licensed as an esthetician, I went to nursing school because I loved cutting things open and sewing. Like, I loved blood. I loved seeing how skin healed. Like, I was just fascinated with everything with skin because it's the largest organ. It protects us, the way its ability to heal. It's just, I find it to be fascinating. And when I got licensed as an esthetician, I remember my whole family was like, don't you think you're like kind of smarter than that? Like, skincare was kind of looked at for like the women that like didn't have real goals or dreams. I was like, no, you can manipulate skin to change it. And when it looks better, people feel better. Like, I just saw it in such a different light. And it really just inspired me to do something in it. And now it's really cool to see so many women inspired by that as well. But that kind of took me into that whole world. And then when I came up with my company, I was really just, when I was on TV, I was listening to what women complained about. And they were complaining about having too much stuff, it being everywhere, walking into their bathrooms, feeling overwhelmed, you know, living in New York City in small bathrooms or college dorms. It's just, it's a lot of stuff, you know, even you, I'm sure you walk into your bathroom, you're like, whoa, like there's a million bottles.
Just this morning, yes, I had that feeling.
It's
yes.
crazy. And I was like, if I'm opening my drawer and I'm always looking for my things and other women are complaining about this, what can I do about it? Which is how typical entrepreneurs create things, right? We're just simply trying to solve a problem, whether it be big or small. So I started engineering it out. And then Claude's best friend, Ben Kaufman, owned a company called Quirky.com at the time, which was basically a company that was trying to take all the manufacturing out of China and bring it to the US and bring basically jobs back into the US by engineering it. And then the company would invest in the US made products. It was a really cool concept. So I found an engineer through Ben Kaufman, ended up using him, and then we engineered it together. And then that's kind of how the Life of Beauty magnet, the tool set, came to life. And then the whole magnetic aspect of it was really just this divine intuition that I'm not put on this earth just to sell beauty products. I'm meant to manipulate the way women perceive themselves internally and externally. And the DNA of the company, I actually think, is going to end up being way more important than the magnetic tools and the magnetic skincare. It's about simplifying the brain and the body.
I love how you kind of bring it into a brain, body, soul vibe. I mean, you mentioned that you feel like beauty is this soul and body connection. I'd love to hear more about that.
For me, my skincare routine is more than just like slapping a bunch of stuff on my face. It's very spiritual and it's very meditative, because growing up, the only reason I had any health insurance is because my mom's a teacher. So we had incredible health insurance. But this country, as we see with all like the school shootings and everything that's going on, like mental health is a crisis, and this country does not care about healthcare. And it's very problematic. And I'm like, okay, if my mom wasn't a teacher, I would not have had healthcare. And I would say, I don't know the numbers, but if I had to take a stab at it, 70% of this country cannot afford healthcare. And I'm like, okay, if women cannot afford healthcare or psychiatrists, you know, thank God we're so lucky we're able to have that. But I think like, you know, we definitely live in this like very glorious bubble and we're blessed, but most women don't. So I'm like, okay, if that's the situation, how can I create spirituality and a process where women, as they're doing their skincare routine, work with doctors and psychologists to create these podcast sessions of 5 to 10 minutes where it's nothing other than verbiage and music that is scientifically proven to rewire the brain. So kind of like kill two birds, one stone type of situation. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm doing a routine or I'm taking a bath or I'm lighting a candle, I put on a podcast or music or classical music or something like that. So I'm like, I want to be able to have that modern woman do her routine, listen to this, and then go about her life.
I love that. It's so brilliant. And I love how you talk about how you can really manipulate the skin. Tell me a little bit about that. I'm sure all the women listening want to know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the best thing is balance. You know, there's not one skincare line. My skincare tool set's not going to change your skin. In-office treatments, Botox filler, like all that stuff. There's not one thing that changes the skin. It's the cocktail of doing everything and doing it in a way of consistency, just like working out, just like eating healthy, just like keeping kosher. Like everything's about being consistent. So for me, I'm like, these tools are meant like makeup brushes are for makeup. Do you need makeup brushes to put on your makeup? No. But is it going to make your makeup look better? Yes. Skincare tools are like that for skincare. It helps your skincare penetrate deeper. It helps depuff, helps remove the comedone extractor for blackheads so that your skincare seeps into the skin better and kills the lining of the blackhead. Like there's just ways to use skincare tools to manipulate the skin with skincare and also make you slow down. Like the certain rollers, like, is it life-changing to use a rose quartz roller? No, but it forces you to slow down.
I love your honesty, and I love how you're basically saying that you can manipulate with the time, with the calmness, and that really makes all the difference. And I love how you analogized the skincare tool to makeup brushes, because sure, you can do your makeup without makeup brushes.
Absolutely.
And you can do your skincare without skincare tools, but it's going to help. And I think that's a really cool analogy.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk a little bit, kind of going back to the whole Jewish thing. How does Judaism color your life today? How do you incorporate it into your everyday?
Well, I think you'll be very proud of me because I started doing the morning hand washing.
Oh, wow.
I know. I started doing that like a month ago.
Wow.
And even though the prayer's like literally like 3 lines, I'm like, why do I keep messing this up? Like, I'm smart. I'm like, I have to like tape it to my mirror.
Don't feel bad. When I was first starting to do it, I really struggled with it. Yeah. And I had the same feeling like, how am I forgetting to do this each morning? Like, it should take a second.
And it takes 5 seconds.
Yeah. So don't be discouraged. It was really hard for me also when I was beginning. So that's fantastic. Well, do you want to tell everyone about what it represents and what that is?
Yeah. So for me, when I wake up, I mean, I forget sometimes, and I keep having to remind myself because it's a new part of my ritual, right? But when I wake up, like, you're not supposed to like touch your phone or anything prior, but like it's still kind of habit to like roll over, touch my phone, pet my dog. So I'm still kind of trying to get out of that and just like go straight into the hand washing. But I'll wake up, go to the sink, do the hand washing 6 times, say the prayer, wipe my hands dry, and then kind of go into my thing. I haven't been doing like the morning prayers because I'm trying to take it one step at a time. Totally. One of my friends told me if you start to do everything all at once, it's too much energy and it'll actually like backfire on you. And I believe in that. Like, you got to go into things slow and steady. But I've really enjoyed the hand washing. I just feel like it's such a beautiful way. Also, like, aside from the spiritual part, I love like the cold water hitting my hands. I don't know. There's something about that that's like lovely.
Like a textual thing. That's great. So again, what I kind of want to know is, what are some of the challenges that you have experienced in creating this company, and what are some of the successes?
Real talk?
Yeah, real talk. I don't want the fake.
Raising capital as a female sucks. I've found incredible investors that really understand me, understand the brand. It has been challenging when you are a female and men are men, and before they realize you're smart, they just want to be inappropriate a lot of the times. It's definitely been frustrating, to say the least, especially when you're in beauty. There's this whole like stigma, like, how could a woman possibly be attractive and smart simultaneously? I'm like, wow, I know that's like a lot for some people to comprehend, but you can wear a full face of makeup and have a brain.
Right.
I know.
Mind blowing.
You don't have to be frumpy and be smart. Like, you can wear makeup and heels and look, good. Like, it doesn't have to be one way. Like, everyone just loves to put people in boxes. So that's been challenging. But on the flip side, I kind of see life as like a numbers game when it comes to people. Out of 10 people, 7 are not going to be that great. One's going to be decent. Maybe the 9th person will be whatever. And then the 10th blows you away. So I kind of have always kept that mentality, and I feel like that's really worked for me because people do surprise you, and you do meet incredible people too. So with the bad comes the good. So raising capital during the pandemic, I raised my first $1 million, which was incredibly challenging. Having a child, I had never struggled with anxiety or depression my entire life. I got really bad postpartum during the pandemic, during the raise. That was one of the most challenging times of my life. Now doing my second raise, I find that the more I kind of sit back and take an approach, like, I know this good will come to me, and having faith in God and myself and my brains and my brand, I just have a better approach to it. So that's been one challenge. What was the second half of the question?
How about some successes?
Some successes is seeing seeing something that you've designed come to life is so crazy. Like creating something, being like, is anyone going to care about this? Is this stupid? Like, does anyone really give a shit? Like, you know, you like, does anyone actually care? And then seeing people be like, oh, I needed this. Like, I didn't know I needed something like this has been really cool. And then like QVC and seeing the Forbes thing come to life and just like all these things I visualized coming to life is just, you know, you can't help but be like, wow, like if you can visualize something, you really can manifest it. It's cool.
Agreed, totally. And that visualization almost can be a form of prayer, which is, you know, I sent you that prayer that I say every day, and I've totally seen miracles from that. And
by the way, when do you say it?
Yeah, so it's basically a prayer of thanks to God, and you can say it anytime. You can say it anywhere. I have seen miracles in my life. I've given it to students, and they've said that prayer every day, and they've seen miracles in their lives, you know, whether it be they needed a child or they needed income or whatever it was. And it was just, I've literally seen the miracles, and so I had to share it with you, especially since you asked me.
When I read it, I like got so teary-eyed and so emotional.
Oh, wow.
I was like, it's so simple and so easy, but so deep simultaneously. Yeah. It's like the easiest thing ever and the deepest thing ever. Right. It's really cool.
And it's really like a form of just praying to God in your own language, which I think is so powerful to really talk to God like he's right there next to you. And
I was so confused. I was like, what is this Thanksgiving prayer? I was like, what are you talking about?
You're like, it's not Thanksgiving, Sarah. I'm like, no, Thanksgiving is every day. Every day we get to thank God.
It's like, what is with the turkey? What's the situation?
But thinking of Thanksgiving and gratitude, I bet you were super excited about that first $1 million that you raised. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can give a lot of praise to God for that. Yeah. But, you know, I think you had mentioned that you have 2 Muslim investors.
Yes.
Why was it important for you to have Muslim investors?
You know, it wasn't even important. It wasn't so much as it was important as it was very natural. I mean, these are men that have been in my husband and I's lives for a while. And what I find is Israelis and Jews in general don't invest in beauty the way Muslims and Arabs do. It's kind of like a known thing that Muslims and Arabs are like obsessed with beauty. They know the obsession with it. I mean, it's just funny to me. And like, I know that it was designed on purpose because like Baba Sali, he had this ability to give prayers to Muslims, Jews, Asians, African Americans. Like he was someone that wasn't just a man of Jews, he was a man of the world. And I feel like it's just, the more I think about it, I'm like, wow, this was literally by design, that I'm supposed to be the one that brings everyone together. Because people who follow me on social media, they're like, how do you know like so many Asians and then like random Latina girls and then like all these Black girls and these Jewish girls? I'm like, I think I'm on this earth to use beauty as a way to connect women and to help women no matter what they look like. And I kind of just see it in my everyday life. And I think that these men see that in me too, and they want to help me bring that to life.
Now, speaking of what you had just mentioned, I know that you had mentioned that sometimes you are mistaken for a different culture and people don't realize that you're Jewish. So tell us about some of that and what I call a Kiddush Hashem, which is a sanctification of God's name, meaning somebody sees you and they're like, oh, she's so awesome. And then they're like, oh, she's Jewish? Oh, Jews are awesome. Yeah. So tell me some of those stories I remember you shared with me before.
Yeah, Montana gets that all the time too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, I don't know what does Jewish look like, right? Because in Israel, like people are always like, oh, you look so Israeli, especially when I'm like super tan and like my hair is down and like curly, no makeup. It's funny how that works. But a lot of people always think I'm Latina. Even my husband, when he met me, he was like, oh, are you Spanish? I'm like, no. But my father's side being Moroccan Sephardic, I mean, they are. So it's not like that far-fetched. But then in the winter when I'm like super, super pale, then people are like, oh, are you just like white? Like it's like it's like no one really knows where to put me. It's really funny. But yeah, it also depends like what I'm wearing, what I look like. But I don't know. I like to have fun with it too. So
well, I remember you telling me that at work even and maybe on the Steve Harvey show, you had an experience where someone maybe didn't like Jews, and then once they realized you were Jewish, they're like, oh, Jews are great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest issue with the Jewish community, and I told you this, is that I don't think we are tied enough to the Black community. The Black and Jewish community have so much in common that if we came together, it would be next level incredible. And the Jewish community, what we really need to do is pull people from other communities, bring them into ours, educate them, instead of just focusing on Jews having our community and sticking together because out of fear that if we don't stick together, because obviously the community is beautiful, and being together, we understand each other. We understand our brains work, how we operate, but we have to start including other communities because that's the only way that anyone's going to really ever understand us as a whole.
Okay, so you talk a lot about obviously beauty, and I'm hearing self-esteem because of this inner and outer soul-body connection. What are some of your tips for women to maintain their self-esteem, especially young women today, and especially with the advent of social media and how that's really kind of ruining a lot of young people's self-image?
So in the States, there's always this like interesting portrayal of what beautiful is. And I think that the best way to have really great self-esteem is to know that beauty looks different everywhere. It looks different in America than Africa, than Ireland, than Israel, than Antarctica. And I think it's really important for young women to travel and experience other human beings, because once they do, they're going to be like, they're just, their whole life changes. And I think a big problem in the States is that people don't travel enough. They don't see and interact with people that don't look and act and feel the way they do. And I think that once that happens, they'll be like, I'm beautiful because I have something to offer that this female doesn't, and vice versa. I think that is the best way to have not just emotional intelligence, but security in oneself.
So being able to expose yourself to all different forms of beautiful people and realizing that everyone has something to offer.
Correct.
It's so interesting that you say that, because actually in Judaism believes that the more you expose yourself to a person, the more beautiful you believe that they are. That's actually why when a man and a woman are first married, their first year of marriage, they're supposed to spend a lot of time together. It's like actually part of what the Torah talks about. And part of that is that the man and wife should see each other often so that they become more beautiful to each other and in each other's eyes. So it's interesting that you bring that up, and we can tie that into,
I love that. That's really cute.
To a Jewish source.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. I do kind of want to talk about, if you're willing to go here, and we can edit this out, so don't worry about it.
Sure, I'm fine.
But, you mentioned to me previously when we did the article that your father was somewhat abusive.
Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about that in this public space?
Sure.
And how did that shape you now, for better or for worse?
So my father, being Moroccan Sephardic, coming from trauma of the Holocaust, living in Israel. Israel's only, 70 years old? 71? I don't even, how old is it now?
75 almost.
75?
Israel is 75 almost.
I'm like, how old is it now? Yeah, 75 years old, right? So my father is what? I think he's in his late 50s, early 60s. So living in Israel at that time was obviously completely different than what it is now. And you're just talking trauma after trauma after trauma. So the only reason I'm not embarrassed to speak about my father being abusive to my mother is because we know when people are abusive, whether it be emotionally or physically, it comes from trauma. That's it. It's why people have any sort of issue. It stems from trauma. And when you are in a marriage with someone who's culturally different than you, even though you may be both Jewish, culturally significantly different than one another. They got married young, 24, maybe, 23, 24 years old. And I just think that it was a recipe for disaster at that time, especially with psychiatry and all these things not being normal, right? And like that typical like macho Israeli Moroccan guy who's like, I don't need a therapist, I don't need psychiatrist, all of that. So obviously who he is now is a completely different person. But I think it's shaped so much of who I am because I'm able to understand that trauma, and look where I'm at now. It's like I'm using trauma to mold my business for other people experiencing that who can't afford help.
Right. It's interesting also because you said it's almost like you're fighting two different messages from your childhood. From your mom, it was, you can't be beautiful and smart. And you're like, yes, you can, and let me show you. And from your dad, this concept of, overcoming, being abused as a woman and being able to change that in your life as an adult. So I think that's really, really special.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you were going to be speaking at a conference. Was it next week?
So I'm flying to New York on Sunday for NASDAQ, for Bloomberg, and then the conference is Luminary Women, and that's in San Diego on the 15th.
Okay, so tell me more about both of these.
Okay, so I'm really pumped about the NASDAQ Bloomberg situation. Coming home to New York is always nice because it feels like home. All the women are like very similar to us, so it's cool. But Bloomberg is doing this whole initiative around female founders with businesses that have like a deeper meaning tied to it. I think it's really cool. So I'm very pumped to do that. And then Luminary Women is just an incredible organization ran by a woman named Kate Luzio, who's just such a badass. And she's doing this whole panel about knowing your worth as a female founder or as a woman in business. So I think post-COVID, it's just so nice to be able to be in a room with another human being, but I just feel like people are just becoming so much more connected because they missed that so much. Yes. And as a 100% extrovert, I crave that. Like, I need to be around other human beings or I really struggle. Like, I suffer significantly. So it's really nice to be able to do that and just be on these panels with women who are just unreal. Like, the past few panels, the women that I've been on panels with, I'm like, who are you? Like, how do you freaking exist? This is unbelievable. So it's just nice to have like-minded women in one space.
Right. Give me an example of one of those women.
Dr. Nigma, I just met on a panel a few weeks ago. She's a doctor from London. Gwyneth Paltrow, everyone from Goop is like obsessed with her because she's not just smart, she's beautiful, she's badass. And she just wrote a book about the tie of the gut to the skin. But even deeper than that, she is just so kind. She's a Cancer sign. I'm a Cancer sign, so we relate on that. But I rescued a dog who was basically dead. She rescued a dog that was basically dead. And she's just got like the biggest heart and such a deep soul. And same thing with her, like skin and aesthetics. It's so much more than just the external. She really sees it as a full body experience. So it was really cool to connect with her. And she came over for Shabbat. It was her first Shabbat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really
so
fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like she's more than just skin deep with using a nerdy pun.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to ask you, what is your favorite aspect about Judaism?
Ooh. Probably the alone time to connect with oneself, aside from the connection to God, because that's obviously such a big portion of it, but the ability to connect with oneself. Wow. Because in such a busy world, when you don't have time to do anything, I look at it as like, this is my time to connect with God, but more so time to connect with myself. And that's when it comes back to like the killing two birds, one stone, where it's like, I can connect with God, I can connect with myself and show myself respect by taking care of myself. So it's like, you know how they say the vessel has the left, right, and center? Yeah. I look at it as left, right, and center of me, God, self-care.
I love that. And especially considering that you're an extrovert, that you're even saying that you need that alone time and it's so important for you. I mean, that's huge. Even, I guess, then for an introvert, how much more so would they need that?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, for an introvert, it's like I would double the time.
Yeah. So powerful. I do want to ask you also, who or what inspires you most and why?
Who or what inspires me most and why? Personally, there's for a personal and a business. So personally, my son, because I know everyone says this, they're like, oh, my kid's the coolest, blah, blah. Like, people meet my son and they're like, there's something special about this kid. Like, they're like, I don't know what his personality, the way he is, the way he speaks. Like, he is just such a powerful child. It's unbelievable. And he inspires me to just be smarter and stronger and better. Like, he's just so funny. Like, yesterday he walked in, he's like, Mom, he says mom, like as if he's like 35, Mom, with the head like this. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm working. Why? so I can buy you toys. Okay, keep working. Like, who talks like that?
So
what
funny.
3-year-old talks like that? There's so many times I like my head, I feel like it spins like 360. I'm like, what? Who are you? But even more so, like, he's just so deep. And like last night he's holding me and he's like, you're my best friend, I love you so much. And like, I'm like, who are you? What is this? He like caresses my face and outlines my lips. I'm like, what? Who acts like this? So he's just constantly inspiring me to be a badass, because like, you cannot bring home just any female. Like, she has to be the best. So like, I have to be the best, you know?
And I've met him. He's such a cutie. Oh my gosh. He is exactly as you described, like just such a great kid.
He's
so much
just
fun.
unbelievable. He's crazy. But professionally, Barbara Corcoran, for sure. I've always idolized her and thought she was like the best things in sliced bread. She's just so strong and smart and no BS and just doesn't ask for respect. She just commands it. And I think she is so powerful.
Well, tell everyone more a little bit about her and what she does.
So Barbara Corcoran is a real estate tycoon and insane businesswoman. I mean, she's just, I don't think anyone really compares to her in terms of business. And she's obviously a Shark Tank panel. She's on the panel as a panelist, and she just tells it how it is. No BS.
And you were on Shark Tank, right?
No, we are considering it.
Yes, that's
We're
right. Okay, so
considering
tell
it.
everyone about that.
So my product it's like a Swiss Army knife for women. So it's very innovative in the way that all the tools come together, not just for simplicity, but it's aesthetically pleasing. It's more sanitary because it has a spray bottle to make sure everything's clean, because you obviously, especially post-COVID, want to make sure everything's clean. But it's just such a Shark Tank product. So we're considering doing it. I've done TV for so long, so I feel like it would be a natural fit. But I also want to respect the brand DNA and like I just want to make sure everything's done correctly and that it feels authentic and good.
Right, I hear that.
I don't want bad juju on it.
Yes.
You know, like if someone were to rip you apart or your product, even though that's part of like the process of the show, totally respect it. It's a show. It's got to be entertaining. I just spiritually would not want anything to be tainted, you know?
I hear that. I hear that. Now, I do want to talk. You said you were on TV a lot, especially for the Steve Harvey show. First of all, tell everyone exactly what you did on that show, but also, do you have any interesting stories from that time period?
Oh, yeah. So first off, Steve Harvey himself, I know people always like have an idea of like what celebrities or what they act like or would be like. He is one of the most incredible men I've ever met in my entire life. He's incredibly smart, adores his wife, and he was just such a pleasure to work with. But what I did on that show was I hosted a makeover segment where women who kind of fell into a rut, whether it be work, personally, and marriages with kids, just fell into a rut, lost themselves. And we came in, me, hair and makeup, came in, figured out what we wanted to do, and kind of just gave them like a reboot. And these women were so cool. Some of the best situations, like it's just, they inspired me. They were like, oh, you inspired me to take care of myself more. I'm like, you inspire me that you're just so open and like down to do something like this. Could be awkward and weird to be on national TV and, you know, go from one way to another. It's not natural. So they inspired me to even be more myself and more authentic. But one of the women, her name was Patty, she was just so amazing, and she actually ended up working at NASA. Do you remember when I went to speak at NASA? I was telling you how pumped I was.
Yes.
She's the one that brought me in.
Oh, wow.
So one of the makeovers I did on the Steve Harvey show.
Oh, wow.
She works at NASA and wanted to do this whole initiative on how women at NASA need to tap into themselves and feminine energy, because they're obviously constantly operating from a place of masculinity. And that's how I got into there. So it's just like such a 360 moment. And she like, it's so funny. I saw her and she used to like not really, she would, you know, do like a slight routine, but she was like, oh, I'm wearing this makeup and these lashes and this. And I was like, yes.
So you really transformed her life.
She like loves to do her routine and like get her shit together. And like, she had on these like little false lashes and she looked amazing. And she was at NASA.
That's great.
It was incredible.
I did watch a clip or two of your makeover segments, and it was really quite a transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, and the reaction of the women to see themselves looking in their mind and in everyone's mind so beautiful. It was really nice to see that and how happy they were with the results.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was, if I could do that again and somehow like incorporate it into the business, I would, but it's obviously like so time consuming and like everything has to be coordinated. It's like, it's a show, you know? But
well, it is almost like what you're doing now, but now you've got a product to do that for people. So it's kind of combining both.
Right.
But what a joy to speak with you today. We have time for one more question.
Okay.
How you decided to be open about your Jewish identity online and what ramifications that has had for you.
Well, transparently, during the whole Israel-Palestine conflict, I had gone on stories and was very open about how I felt, which led me into a situation of one of my followers who's Palestinian was just very aggressive about it. I had to end up taking it to the cops because there was a situation where she was emailing my clients and my stylist, and it got really crazy. And then like death threats towards Jordan, and it was very overwhelming. I didn't know how to handle it. I don't even know how A-list celebrities deal with this stuff. Like I can't even imagine, because I had to deal with it at such a low level and it was very traumatizing. It's part of the reason we moved to Beverly Hills, I told you, because I was like, if we're in California, I need a house with a gate and a driveway like this, because I don't have the mental capacity for that, you know? That was very challenging. And after that, I kind of, to be quite honest, I didn't talk about it as much. Like I'll post when we're in Israel, like I'll try to keep it very positive and light. I was showing on stories what the beaches in Tel Aviv look like, that there's like an Arabic beach where all the women are covered from head to toe, and there's Jews and Arabs and Muslims and everyone's hanging out. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are thinking about Israel, but like this is what it actually looks like, and it's normal life, and everyone's like, you do you, I do me, don't bother me, I don't bother you. That's it. You know, or even like in Jaffa, I was taking a workout class and it was half very religious Jews and half very religious Arabs. And they were all speaking in Hebrew together. You know, I don't have to tell you. It's whatever. So I tried to highlight stuff like that, but I never, ever, ever speak about politics anymore on social media. Yeah. And I just talk about how I love Judaism and how I love my Muslim partners, because they're incredible guys. And we're with them all the time and we really enjoy each other's company.
That's great. I'm actually really shocked. Like you just casually mentioned that this woman was giving death threats to your son, your 3-year-old son, but you just kind of slipped that out.
She wasn't. Okay. It was other random people. She was more like trying to sabotage my career by emailing clients or my stylist and stuff like that, being like, you don't know who this girl is and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's nothing I'm embarrassed about. There's nothing that you can embarrass me about, because I'm transparent through and through. You know, I love being Jewish. I love being Israeli. And I also love having Muslim and Arab friends. That's it. And I am very pro-Israel. That's it. And if anyone ever had an issue with that, we can talk about it, eat, have some drinks, and move on. Like, that's it.
So kind of, you know, you very casually just slipped in there that someone was death threatening your 3-year-old child. That was a surprise and kind of a huge deal that you just mentioned as if it was no big thing. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I probably should have gone to therapy for it, but, you know, but I just realized, like, you can't take these things personally. And that's why, like, people are like, oh, you're married and you have a kid? Like, you don't post that on social media. I'm like, no, this is a business and beauty account. I do not want my kid on social media. I don't want my husband. Sometimes I don't even wear my ring or jewelry. Like, I like things where they are because I'm just trying to protect my peace, right, you know, while dabbling in it and showing people part of that, like part of my life from time to time, because it's a way for women to connect with each other. But I'm just very cautious of it now. Even with the school, he goes to a gun high, and like, you know, and it's one of the moms on Instagram tagged the school with the kids, and obviously she didn't do it intentionally, but I like immediately texted the rabbi and his wife. I was like, this is not, no. Yeah. You cannot ever, with the way the world is, you can't do, I don't care if you're Jewish, Christian, whatever you cannot tag schools. Yeah. You can't do it, which is sick that we even have to do that. But the only reason I'm casual about it now is simply because I know these things happen. You got to keep it moving.
Right. Well, let's end with something a little bit lighter. We have time for one more question. What's your favorite Jewish food?
It's so hard.
Everything, right?
There's nothing like an Israeli breakfast. Nothing.
Okay, for anyone who's not aware of what an Israeli breakfast
Yeah.
is, you got to describe.
Yeah, it's like a gazillion salads, which I love. I eat very much so like a Mediterranean diet. A million salads with eggs, spicy pickles, like everything I love, just in one. I
Sounds
usually
amazing.
hate matzo ball soup, but the one I make is really good.
Oh, Montana's looking for a good matzo ball recipe. You got to give
She
that to
said
her.
that.
Yes, she
She's
did.
had mine a million times, and she always says
Oh,
it's the
shoot.
best.
She didn't say that. She's not looking for a
I'm about
matzo
to
ball
call her
recipe.
and rip her apart. That's messed
No,
up.
but she may not have the recipe.
Yeah,
she wants to make it herself.
Well, because her and her mom, I don't like the ones that they make.
Oh boy, I'm getting in the middle
I know,
of something here.
I'm gonna get a text from Michelle Tucker being like, Liz, what? Shoot, I don't know.
Well, I think that's a good answer. I like the
Yeah.
Israeli Mediterranean breakfast.
Nothing like a jelly-filled donut.
Oh yeah,
Nothing.
right.
I don't even like sweets, but jelly donuts are like my kryptonite.
Special.
Ugh.
It's special. You know I have a gluten allergy, so I don't get to partake in those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember when we were talking on the phone for the interview for the article,
Yeah.
you were like, enough of this gluten-free nonsense. And I'm like, dum-de-dum, I have a little allergy.
Yeah, but you have the allergy. You know how
Yeah,
these women
no.
are like, I'm allergic to this. I'm like, no, you're not.
No,
you're
right,
not. It's just
right.
trendy. You actually have
I'm
an
not
allergy.
a trend. I was doing this way before there was even anything gluten-free. But Liz, thank you so much for your
This was
time.
so
This
fun.
was awesome. You're so inspiring.
You too.
I feel like people must have learned so much from you. I learned so
hope
much
so.
from you. And I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you, sweetheart.
If you want to learn more about Liz Kennedy, check out the article I wrote about her on Aish.com, linked in the episode description. You can find this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform and on Aish.com's YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.